What's up, everybody? We're in our please stand by mode here for just one moment. Just getting the last couple things set up, letting a blast out that we're going live. Thank you guys for jumping in right from the channel over in Visionary Realms, and thank you to Visionary Realms, as always, for an awesome developer stream. Me and Therek will be starting the show shortly. If you're watching this on demand, it's probably going to be a minute or two. It will not be the typical 5-minute. We are just, again, sending some shout-outs out.
I'm furiously organizing my notes is what I'm doing.
Yeah, this is a crazy little changeover, right?
Trying to make this make sense so I don't have to like look for something for 5 minutes when I want to talk about it, because it was a lot of information.
Yeah. We did get our video captured, so we'll have the footage that you guys saw of the Dire Lord playtest session running while we talk. We will get you guys in, jump into your green room. You can see the instructions down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen there. I haven't seen the score of the Dolphins game.
Oh, no?
Probably losing $50. It was like really bad to start. So,
yeah, the way things have been going for you, I probably would agree with that.
Yeah, whatever. I should put my bets out there, then you guys can just bet against me. I think that would probably be.
It's not a bad idea.
The best way to make everybody money. Yeah, I'll just keep losing all mine. All right, Therek, we're blasted out. We're out there on Twitter. We're out there across the Discord channels. We are live on Twitch right now.
We're everywhere we want to be.
We're everywhere we want to be. You ready for tonight's recap?
Oh, yeah.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get this started.
Do it.
Oh, we're live? We're streaming right now? Cool. Awesome, man. Let me just
What is going on, everybody? Minus here from Pantheon Plus, and tonight we're here to talk about the developer stream that we just saw on the Visionary Realms official Pantheon channel. We got to learn about the Dire Lord, but as always, I'm joined by Therek, my rewind partner in crime, and he always joins us for the recaps that we do of Pantheon's dev streams, because it's a lot of work. So he takes all the notes. I do any video capping, pictures, and stuff like that. So you guys will see down below there that we actually have the Dire Lord stream running. So if you guys missed any of it, you'll get to see that kind of running on loop in the background there. So one of the things that I do want to start with, because it was mentioned in the chat before we dive into notes here and getting all excited about the different things that we've seen tonight, and I do want to tell you guys that we got permission to talk a little more about the Dire Lord from our experience, which is super cool. And we want to thank Joppa for that. Talking to him during the stream, he allowed us to go in more depth on our play session with the Dire Lord, and in a sense of like how the abilities worked and stuff. We're not going to get into much more outside of that. So the first thing is we saw in the chat, Therek, people asked if for any reason that bears would show up and this and that. Well, if anybody, someone said the audio quality is off. You guys can hear me, but I'm sure for some reason my camera seems to be lagging, but that should be it. Is everybody else okay?
Mine is a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's just, it's probably my camera, guys. I don't know what's been going on. I think it might be dying, so I'm getting a little bit of lag. I think I might just have the frame rate up too high on it or something, so my apologies. So this is what's going to happen when people follow us or subscribe to us, and we've had a bunch, and you're not going to get to hear this, Therek, but you'll get to see it if you have the window open. We're going to do this from now on, right after the follow or the subscription. Watch, here you go. Ready? Yep. Yeah, Minus learned how to make transparent videos, so
I think seeing it is enough. I'm glad I didn't have the audio on that. Last time I've heard it before. It was a little frightening the first time you hear it. So.
It's terrifying for me. Absolutely terrifying. So
terrifying for me.
We now have bears on the show chasing Minus. So let's get to the meat and potatoes here. We could BS all night, but we do that every Sunday, so we shouldn't do it here. Let's go ahead and we'll do it every once in a while with the bear running by when people follow. I'm not going to do it every time.
No, not every time.
It's just going nonstop. Okay, so let's get into the dev stream. let's go ahead. We talked about the Dire Lord. Let's just start right away with the Dire Lord. If you couldn't, on the screen, you guys will see this is kind of the part of the video where Joppa is going through the spell book. So there's there's not going to be a whole lot of action down there for right now. But essentially, we went through the different abilities. I want to give you guys my thoughts and opinions on them. Therek, jump in on any of this stuff. So Sanguine Blade was the first spell that you got. And I think we talked about that a little bit on the, actually we didn't talk about that on the rewind because we did not have that in the first play session. This was actually changed. Yeah, this was actually changed for the second play session. And Sanguine Blade was sort of an essence spender. As he said, it just does a little more damage. I think it also did a slight heal.
It's sort of like the identity, one of the big identity pieces of the Dire Lord, right? Because Dire Lord's all about tanking and self-healing, right? So that's what this does. This gives you that 125% damage, restores 10% of your health. So it's very useful.
It's an interesting ability, and we'll talk a little bit more about its usefulness later. It's a spender. And it's strange because it is the first ability you got when we were testing. And like I said, Joppa allowed us to talk. This is not under NDA right now. It is NDA, but we're being allowed to talk about it. It's an interesting level 1 spell because sometimes if you don't hit enough or you miss too often, you may not get enough essence to use it, but it ends up being a pretty good spender for the class. If you're looking to add more DPS, if you have a healer, it's nice to be able to give yourself a little bit of health, but I never felt like it was super strong. And keep in mind that abilities are going to improve with mastery. Like Joppa showed a lot of the mastery in that video. So if you missed that stream for any reason and you're just joining us now, as soon as that goes live, go check it out. He'll go into detail a little bit more on that. Thresh. Thresh is awesome.
Thresh is sort of like your bread and butter. It was, it was usable a lot and very sort of your primary special ability, at least at low level.
Yeah, so Thresh, it's interesting because we're going to talk about Provoking Phantoms here in a second. But Thresh is actually... how do I say this? Thresh is more important for initial aggro in an odd way than Provoking Phantoms is. And we'll talk about that here in a second as to why. So it's a nice hit. It's got a bit of a cooldown. And if you hit them, you cause a bleed effect. So it's a nice little grab, right? It's like if you're a Dire Lord and you run up and you hit something with that, it's a nice added, threat gain dot. It's a really neat ability. Now, the thing that I wanted to tie that into is Provoking Phantoms, which I talked a lot about when we talked on the rewind, because that was like the key pulling ability for a Dire Lord. The Provoking Phantoms by itself is not going to keep aggro. That's very important to note. So like if you're pulling a wizard, for example, and you hit it with Provoking Phantoms and you run back and that gets a couple spells off on you, and in that process, the healer starts healing you, they're going to peel it right off of you. And that's kind of the point of what makes Provoking Phantoms a very different taunt pull ability than just like a standard warrior taunt that just gives you a ton of threat. So what you have to do is you have to put Provoking on it, and then you have to hit it with Thresh. Yeah. And if you
wanted to layer, like what I took away was the layering of aggro effects and taunting effects that to keep it on you throughout the whole time.
Yeah. It's pretty neat actually. You saw Joppa and Ronik and them using it and then running back in line of sighting. So we're going to get into that a little bit here in a second as well. That is how we did what we talked about in the story that we put on the rewind. So, we had to break a double mage pull, and it was really hard even with that method, because in the double mage pull, first you can only provoke one, and the other Dire Lord would have to provoke the other, but they're not going to run up for sake of taking damage. And if you both take damage before you get back, now the healers are healing, the healers are dead. So the double mage pull that you guys saw in the original pre-alpha, like little bit that they showed with Ronik and Ben and Joppa, that was very difficult for us with the tool set that you've heard so far. And that didn't include Sanguine Blade because we didn't have it back then. That was the original playtest. So the interesting thing is even with the pulling and with the line of sighting, we still couldn't navigate that pull. And that's where Vital Cage came into play. And I got to tell you guys, like you saw it a little bit, go back and watch Joppa play it. but Vital Cage is incredible. Okay. So the difference really became learning Vital Cage. You really didn't need to line of sight pull anymore. Right. So there were still a lot of people doing it for the group, like to put it in the right position and stuff like that. That's fine and understandable. But if you were pulling a caster, even without it, without some sort of interrupt or silence, you could essentially stand there. This was the method I used to pull, and it was awesome. So you would provoke it, okay? And I told the healers, do not heal me. It's a big deal. So you would basically provoke it. It would cast on you. And as you saw the cast bar now is when you would be using your Vital Cage. Now keep in mind, you'd have to have some essence saved up, because to use Vital Cage, you had to use the essence, right? So you would fight regular mobs, know and plan that you were going to pull that caster next. You pull the caster, you stand there, let it start casting. And as you see that bar getting close to finishing for the spell cast, pop your Vital Cage. You're going to absorb 50% of it. It's not going to be a very big deal. Then it will run to you. You engage it with Thresh, and then you go to town. So rather than having to line a sight in a large open area that we had space, we could just pull it that way. And Therek, I think you'd agree that it changed our speed and our ability to navigate an area incredibly once we had Vital Cage.
Yeah, it changed our survivability quite a bit too. We managed to survive those, because those were no joke. They did a lot of damage with that magic, right off the hit. But once we were able to engage that Vital Cage, we really were able to progress further and made a big difference.
Yeah. I got to tell you guys, I've played games like World of Warcraft where there was like shield reflect on warriors and nobody really used it. It was very limited time that you could get the spell reflect off. It didn't always reflect everything, and it was a clunky ability that in theory was supposed to work how Vital Cage works. But Vital Cage works incredibly. It's so well done that I got to tell you guys, like anybody who's followed any content from me, that as a tank fan, Dire Lord was the absolute bottom for me in regards to like a tank that I would want to play. Now that being said, after playing it and going through that Vital Cage and the strategy of pulling your essence, right? So I wasn't using Sanguine Blade much. Therek, you were using it nonstop, right?
Yeah, because I built my character a little differently than yours.
Yeah. So Therek was using that all the time, but as a tank, I was really not using my spenders because I was keeping it for my Vital Cages. And what's interesting is they showed in the video, which we're going to get into more of the spells that were announced in the stream tonight that we haven't seen. So we won't have much to add on, unfortunately.
One of the things that before we move on, I just want to mention, Joppa was very clear about saying how this ability, as the Dire Lord, is the anti-magic tank. Right? Yeah. They specialize in mitigating spell damage. So this Vital Cage spell is like the first one that you get that really puts that into the focus. And I love that. I love that sort of the class identity of the Dire Lord, thinking about it as the anti-magic tank. I think that's really, really neat.
Yeah, so we just had a subscription, so people were asking for the bear. So
there you go.
I turned the volume down on it a little bit, so it's not as bad as it was when you heard it the first time. The first time I sent that over to Therek, it was like super loud.
Yeah, my ears exploded.
Okay, so that was a great point on that. So we skipped Torrential Veins, and it's interesting because I had this question for the group when we had Torrential Veins. It was, you got more essence gain and a little bit more health regen. The health regen, maybe in the future will feel a little better, but the essence gain was really cool. Like, especially because I was two-hand tanking. I think I mentioned that in the rewind. I kept two-hand tanking on with us as well. So when I got a hit, it was a lot of essence. Missing sucks a little bit. But so that was really good for me. I really liked that Torrential Veins. So it was interesting because I think one of the things I said, because we had not seen Nightmare Blood, we had not seen Essence Leech, right? I was like, well, man, like this seems like the ultimate tank, like stance. Like, is there going to be a DPS stance? Like, why would I ever change from this? Because this works perfectly for me. So we'll get into the other stances here in a little bit because we didn't get to test those. So
yeah, no, they were really interesting too. And there's one I want to talk about coming up that, we can just go to it now, but the Nightmare Blood was one of the ones they just showed now. And that's a state as well, but it's a state that allows you to generate more threat. right? So instead of the recovery ability that Torrential Veins gave you and the essence generation, this is the one that's going to be your more tankish. So, I mean, this is the one that you could have probably used more in our situation. And whereas maybe I was more, got more benefit out of the Torrential Veins state.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because so you're probably right. I wonder the difference. You're probably right. There's part of me that still leans toward Torrential Veins is like getting that essence, and especially when you're magic tanking, to be able to make sure you have an essence pull so that you can use your Vital Cage, for example. And if you guys didn't catch it, Joppa said that through Mastery, Vital Cage is going to eventually be able to negate 100% of some spells. I mean, that's big, right? I mean, that's a massive. It's up to you basically fully absorb a at least one hit. My mind's blown. Like, I don't know how that can stay because you're literally going to negate magic. I mean, I felt like at the point that we were using these spells, casters were almost negated if we were fighting one-on-one. Like, I was able to like crush them, in my opinion. So I don't know. Somebody said the music's a little loud. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit for you. Let me know if it's any better. So yeah, it's really interesting. If that can get to 100, I do fear how strong that may possibly be. I guess we'll see. So you went into Nightmare Blood. Do you want to talk about Essence Leech as well while we're talking about the?
Essence Thief is one I actually didn't
write. No, not Thief.
Anything.
The Leech. Towards the bottom. That was another. Did you get that one?
No, I missed that one too.
Okay, so that one's another blood stance. So we have, as a Dire Lord, you're going to have three choices that we see right now. You're going to have Torrential Veins, which is going to give you essence gain and health regen. You're going to have Nightmare Blood, which is a 10% damage bonus as threat. And then you're going to have Essence Leech, which it basically gives you 5% crit, and your crits give you 10% of the health back. So you have this health regen, a little bit more health regen stuff. You have the ability to gain more essence so you can keep your abilities going, or you have a pure threat generation. So it's an interesting choice because I think they all work for a tank. Would you agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, the thing I noticed is that a lot of these abilities, like, they got very complicated as time goes on in terms of like, what situations you would use them in and how you would interact, how you would use them together, right? I'm trying to like write these down, but I'm also trying to understand them as they were being shown on the stream. And what I realized is that it's going to take time. I mean, it's going to take time to really understand, how to use them properly, how to make use of them in a way that is most beneficial. And we saw some like interdependence, right? So like, and so I think it's too much right now just to even process, because that's a good thing. I like that. That's a thing that I'm going to like need to sit down and look at these and really study them. So lots of cool abilities.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they're about to pull a caster. So if you guys watch the video, if you haven't seen it, watch for the circle to come up around Joppa's Dire Lord. That is the time frame. You have about a 2-second window, I think is what it was. You have about a 2-second window to pop that Vital Cage, which is, if you're paying attention to the cast bar of the caster, it's not bad. It's legit. There was a time where we had two casters on us, and I negated both because they were pulled at about the same time. And I was watching the health bars, and I hit it, and it was up to take both spells, which was...
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it can only take one, but it was definitely up, and it looked like I was able to lock both of those down, which was pretty interesting. But again, the cold... So Shadestomp said, what was the cooldown on the cage ability? It's... So if a caster were to cast a normal spell, and I would absorb it, and then it would run and wait and fight for a bit, and then start casting again... There was a slight chance that I could get the second one, but most of the time I could get every other spell, is the way it would work. Like if something caused the caster to delay a little bit, basically they would get a cast off and I'd probably have like 1 or 2 seconds on it. I want to say it was like somewhere around an 8-second. I'm just making that up. It's somewhere around like 8 seconds. Oh, look, there you go. 8-second cooldown. Thank you, Joppa, for 2-second uptime. It's incredible. I do fear the 100% thing. I really do, unless there's just certain abilities that you can't cheese.
That was also the final mastery, though, right? Mm-hmm. So that, who knows how hard that is? It might be super hard to get. Maybe only 2% of players even get it. So,
It's only 9
Don't worry about
mastery
that.
points.
Don't be afraid of being powerful. Come on.
I'm putting all my mastery points in that if I play Dire Lord.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much so for the bits and the follows and the subs. We'll get more bear runs here in a few minutes. So the other ability that we got to try, and it'll be I think the last ability that we got to play with, was Foreboding Strike. Now Foreboding Strike was another spender. This one, and they showed it in the stream here. So Foreboding Strike would reduce the AC of an enemy, and then it would be reduced for a certain amount of time. So the strike would hit, reducing their AC, doing damage, and then for 5 seconds or something like that, the next few abilities would, their AC would stay down. So it was kind of interesting because as a tank, I felt like that was now the more important one for me to use. So Sanguine Blade at that point, I didn't use anymore.
It had quite a high essence cost, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, but it also had a cooldown.
Strike.
So I guess it's just that innate, as a tank, the more utility I can have and the more things I can do to manipulate the mob, I liked more. But what's interesting is, Therek was playing a DPS role. So he was just spending essence, build essence and spend essence.
That's right.
Yeah. So it's just interesting. So with the exception of Nightmare Blood and Essence Leech, which we talked about were the other stance, the rest of them we had got to play with. We got to play. So everything else we didn't get to. So we're really going to be talking a little bit of theory on here.
I want to highlight the on the stream they talked about the Blood Fiend ability, which is the one that allows you to become infected, and then at higher mastery levels, you infect enemies with whatever you have. That's pretty cool, man. Love that.
It's actually really cool. So, I mean, my mind races on stuff like that. What can you do that's crazy? So, imagine you're about to fight a boss, but he has some kind of shaman next to him, and you pull the shaman first, and you say to the group, just hold DPS, keep me up. I'm going to keep threat. Wait for the shaman to put this ability on me, for example. They throw some kind of hot on you. You burn the shaman. You run over and you leech it onto the boss for extra help or something like that. That is just you want to talk strategy. We've talked a lot about how this game is going to have strategic decision making and planning. Things like that are awesome.
Very cool. Definitely. That's what I want. Complexity of that nature is very cool. So
it's funny you brought that up because I put so much notes on that, even though I was trying to do a bunch of other stuff. That was a really cool ability. So just quickly running through, we didn't get to see harm shield, sort of like a damage shield. It does damage back to the enemy, so free damage. On top of that, it's probably going to generate some threat, so that's good. Deafening Whisper was an interrupt and a silence. It's in melee range. Joppa made sure to point that out, so you're not going to be able to pull from a range with it with Provoking, but if you're up close and you want to run up and pull something,
and they showed it on that the Forest Dweller they were fighting there.
Yeah, now here's the one thing I didn't get, and I think I asked you. I was like, did you see the cooldown on Deafening Whisper? And neither one of us caught it on the original video, unfortunately. But what's interesting is, depending on that cooldown, being able to weave that with Vital Cage is just... I mean, dude, I get the fact that some people in chat, I don't know if you were reading much of the Twitch chat for the stream, but a lot of people were saying okay, so Dire Lord can do all this stuff against casters. What's it going to look like for, the heavy hitters? I imagine they're going to be okay with the heavy hitters, but they are dominant of casters. Dominant.
Yeah, I mean, that's your class identity, right? Like I said earlier, they're being designed with this in mind, and no classes they can't do everything, right? We know that, and that's what we like. We don't want the classes to be able to do everything, specialize. Yep.
And I just think it's funny because again, this is the tank class I kind of looked at and I was like, my mind's been changed. My mind was changed. I'm not kidding you. Vital Cage is so much fun to play with. For all you Dire Lore fans out there, you were going to enjoy that spell, and I feel like it's going to be a really cool thing for you to be very strategic with, smart with. Again, I worry about the 100% at full mastery. I don't know if there's a cooldown increase. I didn't look at that in detail. But I would think if you get it to 100%, you need to put more cooldown on it, I think is the key there. So And maybe like boss abilities can't be fully negated or something. I don't know.
Yeah. There's a couple other things before they mentioned about the Dire Lord abilities. They're talking about how they key off critical hits a lot, right? So whenever a Dire Lord gets a critical hit, it enables something or it allows another synergy of some way. So, and then they went on a little later in the stream. They talked about how whether you're building for a dual wield sort of build or a two-hander type of build, and how they're sort of thinking a little deeper about one being better for critical hits versus one being better for critical damage. So I like that, they talked about expanding that idea a little bit, because I think that's really important. Again, that goes to that class identity thing where if critical hits are so vital for the Dire Lord's damage output, sort of things, instead of mitigating the spellcasting damage, the damage output, I think that's really interesting as well. Because we in our group, again, we had different...
I'm going to stop you for 1 second because everyone needs to watch the video. This is where Sacred has no idea how to play. He just got killed by the ogre. He was literally running the enemy away from the tank. So we've seen, this is important. I have this in my notes, so I didn't mean to cut you off, but this needs to be talked about. It was happening live. We've seen Sacred try to lead a group in the old Amber Fate stream back before, like right at Christmas. That didn't go fantastic. So maybe tank wasn't, his specialty. And now we're seeing him as a wizard, obviously nuking before the pull. He needs to know that Provoking Phantoms, it's not just that's, we got to provoke and we got to land a Thresh, wait, give your tank a chance. Sacred's just back there nuking with no regard, and then he gets the enemy on him. And instead of letting Joppa, basically get the threat back with a couple of shots, right? A Thresh here and he's done. Sacred runs around like crazy. Like I don't know what he was thinking.
It's a hard game when you are one of the ones involved in making this game. It's difficult. What was he supposed to do? I mean, give the guy a break.
Yeah, it sounds like he's gonna play a ranger. If we're gonna be real with ourselves, he's not tanking. He's
help him out.
You're gonna help him. Okay, so Therek's gonna help you, Sacred. Here's all I'd say, Sacred. I'm not mad at you. I'd never be mad at you. I love you, Sacred. You're one of my pals. But I'm disappointed. I'm just disappointed that you would run the enemy away from the tank. That's all. So
live and learn.
Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Yeah, and maybe you know what? Honestly, let's say one more thing. Maybe he should follow Ronik's lead a little bit, because Ronik looked really good in that stream. He was keeping the tank up. He stayed alive the entire time. Maybe Ronik, if you could for us, can you mentor Sacred just a little bit about when to cast and how to get tank threat back to the tank. So maybe Ronik will take care of that for us before the next time they stream, and then Sacred will probably be that much better. So what do you think?
Well, we can hope. Let's just keep hope alive.
Yep. So thank you, Ronik and Sacred. We'll be grading on a curve next time. Okay. So yeah, I apologize. I super interrupted you while you were going through the two-hander and one-hander. But
no, I made my point. It's fine. I just wanted to point out the differences in the damage output side of things and how they're doing with regard to whether you're wielding a two-hander or dual wielding single-hander weapons.
Yeah. And we were both playing two-handed, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're both. Yeah. Definitely the two-handed was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah. That was good damage.
So we had the Essence Thief, which was a boost of Essence. That's very nice. That's really nice for that whole Polecaster. So you can provoke them, Essence Thief them, so that you have enough Essence to pop your Vital Cage. That's a nice little combo that I can see already right there, which is nice. So we talked about Lead and Blood is like a root, I believe, right?
Yep.
We talked about Blood Fiend. Terramancer is a reduction on the duration of fear. It's passive. Sanguine Shield was very interesting. So you reduce incoming projectiles about 20%, and you get essence from whatever's absorbed. But what's interesting is it can only come in a frontal cone.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make too. Yeah, limited area of effect, limited range around you in terms of what it'll absorb.
Yeah, it is actually kind of interesting because positioning will be very important for the whole fight, not just pulling, but positioning to what might be adding damage to you, or if you're multi-tanking and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. Let's see here. We had Dusk infuse darkness to an enemy. We saw it right at the end of the stream. Now, here's what's interesting about Dusk. I didn't notice, so this is probably my fault. I didn't look at the combat log. We can't see mana bars for enemies yet. So if you notice, you can see health bars. You can't see mana bars, even if you have them selected. I wonder if that's going to change. So that ability is interesting because you can't see what it's doing from a standpoint of draining something's mana, or can you ohm an NPC? That brings a lot of questions to that ability. I would assume the answers are yes, or else the ability probably wouldn't be there. But I'm interested to see if we're going to eventually be able to see the MP bar of the enemies if you're going to be doing that. So
I don't know. If I had to guess, I'd say probably not, but you never know. But,
yeah, it's sort of interesting.
You just have to sort of guess how much mana they have, and when you're close to draining their entire mana pool.
True. Sanguine Cloak just increases magical resistance from a passive standpoint. Dark Revenge is kind of cool, so it's almost like a counter attack. Like if you get hit, if you get crit, you can immediately pop a Thresh to heal yourself, which is kind of neat. And then the last one everyone's talked about for a bit here is the Splatter. Splatter's been sort of one of those key Dire Lord abilities since it was announced, where you can take a detrimental effect on an enemy and spread it to 4 others. That's cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, I mean, so lots of interesting skills and abilities. I mean, they said, at the end of the they were sort of at level 30, I think, is where they capped out in terms of showing the abilities. So obviously nowhere near anywhere we got to see, but so much interesting stuff to do, and can't wait to try these out, and play around with them. Even with the ones that we had available, there was lots of interesting sort of ways of using them. So
yeah,
can't wait to get further down the road with that.
Well, let's be very clear here. I enjoy playing a Dire Lord right now, and if we test and that's what we got to play again, that's fine. But everyone knows that once that rogue is available, whenever that may be, there will be no more Dire Lord in my life. So you'll have to let me know how it goes. Just a small little highlight, joking back with Sacred, but he was playing a wizard. That was a class that was not announced, or a class that was not seen yet. So that's exciting. We actually had somebody playing a class that is, wasn't available for testing, because they did make it public knowledge what was available. So interesting there that we see a DPS class. That means they already put that in just in this time that it took them to go from the end of pre-alpha Shakeout 2 to recording this video. That's pretty close. So
yeah. Well, I enjoyed being a quasi DPS. I'll tell you that much. I enjoyed doing what I could to increase my damage. But play a real DPS class can be super sweet, and I don't get the chance to do that.
So let's talk a little bit about faction. What kind of notes did you take on faction? I know this is important to you. Faction ties a lot into the lore. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah, so
it was really interesting because Job really spelled it out about how the primary faction, right, of a NPC works. So every NPC, what I heard was that they have a primary faction. And if you don't know what that is, you're going to see like a question mark above their head, and they have like a yellow name bar kind of thing. You need to discover that faction or learn it in some way before you can sort of understand, know what faction is. So if you consider them, if you con them, you're not going to know what it is until you've made some effort to discover the faction. And then there's also like the other ties, right? So there's like all these other factions that they're involved with as well. But I'm going to tell you here's the coolest part that I heard of the whole stream. I think my favorite piece of information we got was that some factions are resistant to considering. So this is where the Keeper comes into play. That's what they said. And that's new information. I don't think we've ever heard that before. And we've talked on Pantheon PlusYou before about what's the social value of a Keeper? Like in a group, what does a Keeper help do?
Ronick is making sure, because I think you just misspoke, that there will not be a yellow question mark above their heads. So make sure everybody, it's when you highlight them, your mouse turns into a question mark. It's the not
dreaded yellow exclamation point.
Yeah, there's no giant yellow thing. So just so everyone's aware.
Oh, good. I thought he was going to correct me on something else.
If people would have left him, like Therek said, there's yellow question marks over people's head. Good luck. I'm going to be like, who's Therek? I've never heard of him.
Oh, no. I got a terrible mistake to make. Oh, my gosh. I had no idea I was on such thin ice. I hear you. The yellow, it's a question mark. We'll leave it at that because you haven't discovered the faction. But anyway, as I was saying about being resistant to considering, resistant to conning, and you have to sort of be a Keeper to do that. I love that. The other thing about faction they mentioned was that, and I think it's important that there's no like lockout mechanics involved for like dungeons or raids or anything like that based on faction. Joppo's very definitive about that, which I think is good to know. And then the last thing I made a note of was they talked about the Veil of Azaris, and this is a zone we really don't know anything about. We've seen it on the map. I don't think there's any, I could be mistaken, but I don't think there's any lore that really specifically deals with it. But he talked about how this is a zone where you're going to see a lot of NPCs sort of fighting each other is what I got from what they were saying. And then you have to make decisions based on, your faction alignment, based on who you assist, how do you enter the fray sort of thing. So it's cool to hear about a zone we've never heard anything about before, even if it's just a brief description, to know that it's in the works and there's something there. So
yeah. Out. So then we also talked a little bit about the Battlemez. So people who weren't in testing, I don't think knew anything about this. This wasn't announced until Joppa just announced it. I obviously didn't get to experience it firsthand, and neither did you because we did not play Shaman. So, I mean, do you have any thoughts on it before I kind of talk a little bit about it?
No, I mean, just to say that it seemed useful for the people who were in our group. It seemed like it was something that, had some benefit and they were interested in doing. And I think it's interesting that the trade-off, that they talked about on the stream, the risk versus reward, how it puts you in a more vulnerable state to gain that benefit of being able to regen while you're in combat. And it's only usable in combat, they said. It provides a substantial amount of mana regen. You're dramatically increasing the threat towards enemies within 30 meters of you. Dramatically, right?
Dramatically.
The ones that you're in combat with, not just, wandering mobs. So if they're not engaged in combat, I think it was a very important little sort of piece to note, because you could easily just assume, it's just like things wandering by are going to be aggro towards you, but it doesn't work like that. So it sounds like a good tool. It sounds like they're experimenting with it quite a bit. So
yeah, and the only thing I got to really experience about it was the fact that, if somebody decided they were going to, because it's only usable in combat.
Yeah.
So if one of our healers decided at the pool that they were going to battle Mez and not, or med and not let us know, it was bad news bears. 90% of the time they were dead. There wasn't a whole lot we could do to get that off. So we found ourselves trying to use it towards the end of combat, or at least calling it out so that we knew a mob was controlled before somebody did it. Now, Cerulean said he hopes that there is different animations. Joppo is very adamant that there will be different animations for the classes. So no worries there. That was covered. And Ziplocs is killing me here. 28-7 Miami. So goodbye, my bet. That's a cool little mechanic. I actually kind of liked it. He also talked about the fact that they had changed climbing to be an on or off with like a function button, and that they're going to give you the option. If you just want to auto climb, you can, or you can have it be function pressed. I loved function press climbing. Loved function press climbing. Yeah.
I haven't experienced it otherwise. Like when I only experienced it in this state, so I found it very intuitive and very very easy. Yeah, I wouldn't toggle it off.
Yeah, I really liked that. I had played it before where you would just climb. You had to approach a wall pretty straight on. Purposefully climbing feels important to me. So I really like that, holding that toggle. I think that's a huge positive. But the fact that VR is going to allow it to work either way is nice. I mean, who's it going to hurt at that point, I guess? Someone said, minus it's a toggle, call it a toggle. Fine, it's a toggle.
Call it a toggle. Call it what it is, man.
So a couple other things I heard. There will be a max amount of debuffs that a mob can have on them eventually.
That's interesting.
That's very interesting, especially in raid content. Like, you're going to have to prioritize what debuffs are going to be on a mob.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say prioritize. Yeah, you got to make sure you get what you want on them, because if they get to maxed out debuffs, too bad, so sad.
So the last thing I had is that they did answer the question that all classes will be playable during PA5. And let's be very clear, the reason Joppa kind of cleared up all classes, he said all announced classes. And what does that mean? That means no Bard or Necro. So that's what he was trying to say. The 12 classes that have been announced on the website will be playable. So,
Yes. Yay.
Anything else you want to cover
Can't wait.
before we start opening it up to the green room?
No. Let's go to the green room. Let's talk to some people.
Okay, so what we're going to do, if you guys want to chat with us live, give us some of your opinion, let's go ahead and throw today's poll up on the screen because I haven't tossed that up there yet. So for anybody who's still here, please cast your vote as soon as I am able to actually find it. Give me a second. Quick, fill time.
There
There we go. Fill time. Here we go.
I got nothing.
Oh, yeah, we got
Drawing
the
a
bear.
blank.
Using the bear to fill time. I have my screen. It's not quite big enough, so my Streamlabs is like a little bit off the side. Okay, so we're going to start the poll up. Tonight's poll is just what did you think of the dev stream? It's a very simple one. It's typically the poll that we'll run. We're going to open that poll up now. You'll see it in the corner. You can vote amazing. You can vote good. You can vote okay. You can vote meh. Or you can vote disappointed. So especially for those Dire Lord fans out there, exclamation point vote in space, then what you'll see on the side there. So you guys will see it in the parentheses. That's how you vote. Exclamation point vote space, the word that it lists. So curious to see what you guys think, especially again, as Dire Lord fans, how'd you feel about your class being represented? I know a lot of Shaman were really excited when they showed the Shaman. I know there's a lot of rogues laying in wait like, hey, when is our turn? Just saying.
Yeah, a lot of classes lying in wait saying that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's start. We always put Coco Mojo on pretty late. So let's go ahead and pull Coco Mojo in first. Nobody in the green room right now is muted or headsets aren't off, so I'm hoping they're listening. We're going to grab him and pull him in first. So here comes Coco Mojo.
Okay.
Coco, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up?
Hey, man.
Welcome to Pantheon PlusYou, man. What's on your mind from the stream?
Love this stream. It was my class. Loved it.
As your class, nice. So what do you feel? So, we went a little more in depth. Thank you again to Joppa and VR for letting us talk a little bit more about the abilities here live that were sort of under NDA with us playing. So thank you for that. But what did you think between what Joppa said and how we kind of went into more detail? How's the class shaping up to you? What do you like? What are you worried about? What aren't you worried about?
I really like it. The biggest question I have is that they said all resource regeneration is stopped during combat. Does that include your health? And if that includes your health, does that include the Dire Lord? Making a lot of those health regain abilities useless is what I'm
I think
wondering.
it was just mana regen.
No,
I thought it would be like
it's-
mana essence and all that other stuff or whatever.
It's so yes, your passive regens are stopped. So like your normal sitting outside of combat, sitting down or standing and your health just ticking back up or your mana ticking back up during combat or stop. But any abilities that would generate it for you as
Like
a Dire Lord
torrential
will not.
veins, right?
Yeah. So that would go on while I'm in combat.
Yeah.
That would all work. Yep.
Oh, okay. That was my biggest question. It was like, well, wait, what's the point of this ability if that stops?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that wouldn't make much sense.
heals me up faster after combat. I mean, yeah, okay, that kind of boring.
It's more you're just and I'm speaking strictly from the knowledge we have. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just like your base stuff. Because remember, the shaman has that opportunity when with their pet being in one of the forms to actually regen during combat. That was actually talked about a long time ago, and I think they mentioned health and mana, but no one really thought about it because now here we go. So it's sort of just your innate regens, as Hyson just said. So
another thing I was super interested in about was that they may have talked about this a long time ago, but it seems like your skills have abilities, or your abilities have levels.
Yeah, so mastery.
Yeah, for the mastery system, right?
Well, they had the mastery, but they also had level and then 3 question marks.
Oh, like when you can get them. Yeah.
Oh, is that what that was? That all
Yeah,
that
that's
was?
what that was. I think it was just not listed yet, right? Like they didn't have the levels specifically listed on each of the ones.
Ah, okay. I was wondering,
For all the ones
what
they
that
showed.
was.
Yeah, and if you saw too,
Yeah.
like Joppa said when they had when they got to the second level up, like so there were 3 parts of the stream. The second part, all of a sudden they had more abilities, and he said, because we've leveled up, we've gained more abilities. So it's similar to most MMORPGs. As you level up, you're going to get more abilities.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and like I said, by the end of the stream, they said they were around the level 30s.
And they had
in
full
terms of-
bars.
what abilities they had access to at that point. So yeah, and that's right. I mean, the passive bar and the active bar were almost filled up there, right? So
yeah,
it's it's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, just based off this stream and all the abilities, I was thinking of like six different builds you could go for.
Nice, isn't that fun? That's like the best part, right, man? Like thinking about those builds and
it's like the ones both of you guys were talking about, and then like variations of all those.
Yeah, because and that's the thing. I love doing that kind of stuff, right? Because you can play it, you can do it the way you want. You can respec, and we talk about limited action set all the time, and this is what we're talking about, right? So building for certain scenarios, building for certain group makeups. Very exciting.
I mean, I was looking at the abilities and I couldn't help but think of the Dire Lord. Like everybody's sitting there saying like they can't do the melee guys or whatever, but I'm sitting there looking at them and I'm like, yeah, they seem like a tank you would grab, like all of those guys, like that one guy who pulled all the aggro right away, right? That was just that was a bad Dire Lord tank. That wasn't the DPS's fault. All right, it wasn't the DPS's fault because it seems like the Dire Lord's supposed to be a tank that can just handle all that aggro.
So there you go, Sacred.
No?
If you're still out there, yep, Sacred. Look, there he is.
Yeah.
Real quick, Sacred said exactly. He's blaming John.
Sacred did everything he was supposed to do. It was just bad. It was a bad tank.
I should have said that when he was talking about it earlier. That's what I should have said. Damn it, it's a way better answer than I had. So good on you.
I
man.
mean, I know you can always blame the DPS for everything, but in this case, exactly. I think that DPS was good. Exactly. And I can't believe that guy died again. What's his name? Ronik?
Sacred.
Ronik? Yeah.
No, Ronik didn't die.
No, I don't know what you're talking about. Ronik died.
Ronik says, how about running around like a fool? Where was that in the strategy?
That's not a Dire Lord ability.
Coco, thank you very much, man. I'm happy to hear you're still excited about your class. That's a big deal, right? Like a lot of us this early on have already really sunk our teeth into some of these classes and we can't wait to play them. So the worst thing that could ever happen is you see a release for your class and you start to feel opposite, right? Because you're building up all this like excitement for it. So hearing that you're excited is awesome.
The only thing I wasn't very excited about was combat, like particularly auto attacks. They seemed really fast. Like everything seemed really, really fast in comparison to some like the earlier streams from years ago.
Yeah, and, I'm sure that's one of those things that'll be.
And the ogre's shoulders. I mean, what's up with those, man? He looks like a freaking penguin walking around. He needs some broader shoulders.
Well,
I think they're pretty red.
This is the first time I've ever actually looked at the ogre. I know he's been in a shit ton of streams, but this first.
What do you think about like how red their faces are and like they look like they're sunburned.
I think you're probably going to be able to change that. We don't have character customization at this point.
I don't know. I was just.
Ronik says the models are a work in progress.
There you go.
All right, Coco. Thanks, man.
I figured that much, but yeah, loved everything, guys.
Right on.
Have a good one.
Take it easy.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right, let's go next to Hoye. He's our resident tank. So I'm curious because he's like me, right? Like we both kind of look at Warrior and we're like, yeah, that's your real tank. And I think we were both, if I'm not mistaken, I think we were both sort of in the same boat with Dire Lords leading in. But let's see what he has to say. I'm going to bring Hoye in. Hoye, what's going on, man? Uh-oh. We might have lost him again.
We always get a couple seconds delay with Hoye. He comes on eventually.
Yeah, well, we can drop him back and we'll hopefully be able to bring him back in here when he can hear us. So I'm going to drop him out and we will let's go to John Wayne. So John Wayne, we're going to pull you in next. He says, Hoye down, come back. All right, let's get Hoye back. We'll give Hoye a chance. Are you there, Hoye? Nope, he's not lighting up. So he's not holding control or his headset's not on. Not yet, grab me later. Okay, so John Wayne, we are going to go to you. Let's bring you in. John Wayne, what's up, man? How are you?
I am good. Is my push to talk working?
Yes, you are good.
Sounds good.
We're going to have you help Hoye. No, I'm kidding. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. I'm good. Enjoyed the stream. I got to say, little caveat, VR is doing better and better putting on these streams, and it's getting better and better and more enjoyable to watch every time. I got to say that.
I agree. It's gotten very well, like a tight presentation, right? Like, and the sort of the way that they're integrating live with sort of a pre-recorded video, I think that's pretty cool too.
Yeah, it's smart.
Yes, there.
You know what I'd add to that too is there's a level of comfort that's being developed. When you're streaming, everybody sort of has a role when you have a multi-panel, right? And I think like when you start, and it's the same for me, and I'm sure a lot of other streamers will say the same thing. It's like balancing act of like, When do I talk? When don't I? What's my role? Am I funny? Am I not funny? Am I serious? Am I keeping it on track? I think like between Ronik, Ben, and Joppa, there's very different personalities there. And they're now starting to play off of each other well, which makes it feel like they're more comfortable, more confident. And Ronik, you're definitely the funny one.
Wow. He's not. That rap was. Let's go back to the work in progress on the rap.
But here's what I'll say with the rap. Nobody else on that panel would have tried that rap.
Fair enough.
Ronik said, I'm giving this a go. So, I'm going to give him props for that. So,
got to be brave.
So,
Absolutely.
So, John Wayne, are you a Dire Lord player? Do you want to play Dire Lord as a main or an alt or not?
After the stream, I might give it an alt. I'm a shaman, so seeing the shamans on stream are good. I always love to see the shamans, getting everybody wet, bring the healing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been looking for an alt. I've always been an altaholic, so maybe Dire Lord will be the thing. If I'm not tanking or healing, I'm not satisfied. DPS, sorry to say, has always been kind of boring to me.
Really? Wow. I was just gonna ask that. I'm like, well, okay, so you're gonna make alts, right? So you got your healer and your shaman be your main, and then you make a tank as your alt, but no DPS for you, eh?
I don't know. It depends, because some of these are changing my mind. I've seen the summoner, and it looks to be that might be one I could actually enjoy.
I think for a lot of us, our favorite class is going to be whichever one they show that week, that month. We're like, oh, okay, now I want to play this. No, this is now my main class.
I promise
Somebody
you.
made the comment.
I promise you, whenever they show Ranger, it will not be my favorite class. I can promise.
Well, I'm taking over the show that week.
No way on Summoner. No way on Druid. No. Yeah, you can be the main host. I'll be your guest that week when the Ranger comes out.
Okay, sounds good.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I say it's an amazing stream. I loved it. And my big takeaway, well, I actually have two. My first big takeaway, no matter what the class, different roles. The same class fits into different roles. Dire Lord, DPS or tank. You can do both. Shaman, one was a buffer and one was a debuffer. You can do both. That customization and being able to play the class the way you want to play your class and build your class the way you want to play your class, something that MMOs have been missing for a long time, and I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah, and it's specifically with the shaman. They pointed it out right on stream. They said, they had two shaman. One was doing one thing, one was doing another thing. And that's a great bring up. And
my pinky broke there, and I had to type in all caps for a little while because I was so excited.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Here's something interesting too with that. So it's a great bring up on how these classes can play different roles. But what's important is they're not playing the role of another class. They're playing a different role within their class that keeps them unique. So a Dire Lord that changes to DPS isn't going to be replacing a rogue. It's just going to be a different way to play a Dire Lord. And that different way to play a Dire Lord is not going to infringe on the uniqueness of another class. And that's where a lot of other games went wrong, specifically WoW. When you could take a class and you could spec it to play just like another class that's melee or just like another tank, because they wanted everybody to do everything. I want to be very clear that that's not what Pantheon's doing. So when you do change your role as a shaman, you're still a shaman. You still feel like a shaman, and you're not replacing another class. You're just fulfilling a different role, which it's a great bring up on your behalf there, John. I just want to make sure to clarify with anyone listening.
Absolutely. Thank you for the clarification. I do think it's just wonderful. The only downside is I'm afraid there might be some sort of content that sticks us in a sort of a meta, but I'm hoping that the dispositions and things of that sort will level that out.
Yeah, there's a lot to be seen yet with regard to dispositions, specifically as a sort of a counter to the meta problems, right? And and again, we talked about it before, but meta at the end of the day is a choice, right? And you don't have to participate in it. You don't have to do it. It's up to you. But I hear what you're saying, and you always. You always have a choice, but I think you're right about the dispositions being sort of an answer to it, at least in some capacity.
I'm really happy you brought up the meta talk because, I've been known to say that there is a meta for everything. There's a meta way to brush your teeth. There is a meta way to, slice a pizza.
Runs deep.
Yeah,
the river runs deep. That's right. Exactly.
And that second thing was the factions. I mean, I pointed it out when it was on stream, but on those kills, you see those factions in that window, 6 or 7 every kill. It's just, oh, that's going to be such a complex and wonderful system. I cannot wait. And when he brought up the NPCs also abiding by faction, my heart melted.
Yeah, walking into a situation where a bunch of NPCs are fighting is going to be like, who do we attack?
Yeah, choose your battle, man.
Like, I wonder if you save said NPC from another NPC, is that going to earn favor?
Probably. I don't know, man. I know that's what's so exciting about this, exploring all that stuff. Can't wait.
Well, John, thank you. And thank you for always providing some awesome thought-provoking questions for the rewind. We appreciate that greatly. So
I was going to mention that too. You're like the king of the rewind questions.
I love it.
I'm really going to try to keep it up. I like to throw 3 out, you know. Like I said, if none of them hit the fancy, don't choose any of them. Choose 1, 2, or 3. It's all good.
Yeah, I got one
to spark conversation.
Yeah, I got one all lined up for this weekend, man.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Let's keep it rolling. Let's
keep
that conversation going.
Thanks, man. Thank you for jumping in. Take it easy.
Cheers, buddy.
So you brought up meta, and then what is it? Farman Joe says the meta way to place your toilet paper roll. It's over, by the way.
What?
You're not
it's clearly under. No, it's clearly under. Wait, what are you doing?
I don't think I pay any attention. I just put it on the roll. If I even replace it, so most of the time I just set it on the counter.
Yeah.
So I mean, that
is actually true.
Yeah, meta is on the back of the toilet or on the counter next to the toilet. That's meta. Let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It's the furthest place out of reach, actually. Is the unfortunate truth of the situation.
Meta is having spare rolls in the reachable cabinet under the sink. That's meta.
We got to move on, man. This is going to go really badly, really quickly.
All right. Let's go ahead and Hoye says he's good. So let's try to bring Hoye back in. We'll see if he can get it this time. Hoye, welcome.
Is it working?
It's working. He's here. Everybody, Hoye's here.
I had to restart my computer.
Hoye's made it.
So what's up, man? You are the resident tank. You've ever since we started Pantheon PlusYou. I mean, from day one, I remember you talking tanks, and you came on and hosted a show with us about tanking, talking about that the different tank classes. So, am I wrong in saying? Do I remember correctly that you're a warrior guy through and through? I know that. Was Dire Lord your number 2 or your number 3?
It'd be the last one, yeah.
What do you think now? Does this?
I would try to main tank a monk over a Dire Lord, honestly.
Okay.
So what is it about the Dire Lord that you don't feel like you just don't sort of jive with?
Just the man, or I mean, it's not a mana class, but just it's a spell based kind of tank, and that's just not my suit. I've never played wizards and enchanters, that kind of thing. So just the magical aspect of it, I guess, per se.
Okay.
Fair enough.
But I will say I did like it. I think it looks really good. I think it's pretty much exactly what I was expecting that it would play, that it would be, and how it would play. I think it's pretty good. I really like that they have a strong, spell based type of defense. I like that.
It's pretty crazy, man. Because you played some WoW, right? Am I wrong?
But I was never serious, though.
Yeah, but so WoW had very, very limited amount of time. There when Death Knights first came out. One of the Death Knights, which I think might have been Frost or Unholy, was supposed to be this magic tank. It never really materialized very well. I can tell you right away that this, in the short time that I got to play it, was better. And that shield, again, Vital Cage, as a tank fan, it was so pleasing. It was one of the most pleasing abilities I've ever used from a strategic sense. When to time it, the timing was really strong on it. It was just enough time to get that absorption in. That's the kind of stuff I'm really excited to see how that mechanic then goes over to the warrior's shield block and how that plays.
Yes, and that's one of the things. So watching the stream, I was like, that's exactly the Warriors version of shield block, except for it just seems a lot stronger. That's all.
And shield block's interesting. Shield block, what's interesting to me though is so for a spellcaster, you can see their cast bar. With shield block,
and that's one of the things I was looking at too. I was like, well, it kind of seems really stupid easy with having a spellcast bar on there. So I don't know if I like the spellcast bar, honestly. I think it makes it a little too easy.
I feel like you have to have it for interrupts and stuff, though.
Possibly, and like I said, I haven't played the game, so
of course.
how it actually feels in game is going to make a big difference too. But I don't know. I would like to personally, if it were me, I would like to see no spell bar, and to where you just have to look at the mob and you have to learn, when his hands are twirling by his side, it's going to be a long cast, or if he's got, he's in this animation, it's going to be a quick cast, something like that. I think that would be kind of more. Kind of cool, because ultimately that's kind of what the warrior shield block is. I don't have any indication except for maybe this guy's raising a big two-handed sword over his head or something like that. So I don't know. It just seems kind of trivial and just a little bit easy mode. But I don't know.
I kind of agree with you. I describing it that way. I'm thinking I probably would prefer that too, because I think you're right. I mean, if it's a 1-to-1, right, with a melee class, you don't get that advantage. So. Why do you get that for spellcasters, right?
Yeah, and it negates a lot more of the damage too.
Yeah, it's true.
A lot more.
Yeah, it was an interesting. And like I said earlier, when we got that vital cage as an ability, it opened things up quite a bit. It made quite a bit of difference in terms of what we were able to accomplish. So,
that's a game changer there.
Yeah. And those abilities like that, that give you that next. A level of competence are really important. So,
and I'm glad you get that early in the game. I hated it when, like, in some games, you would have an ability that would just completely change how a class plays. And so, if you saved an ability like that for something like level 45 or 50, like, it kind of sucks. Like, that's like it kind of seems like that's a bread and butter for that class. So making them wait 45, 50 levels, I always hated when a game did that. I mean, I understand level 50 or the level cap, you should get something really freaking awesome, but
not something class defining. I totally get what you mean. Yeah, because like you should be able to, your class identity should be obvious to you as you're playing through and leveling, and you should feel like your class. And like you said, that's kind of a class defining ability. So I agree with you there.
Yeah, like for example, I think the warriors shield wall of shields or whatever, like that's fine for being in game because that's mostly where we're going to use it anyways, so
yeah. Anything else from the stream that stood out to you?
I just like seeing it come together. I'm always looking at their stats, see how high their stats are. I think at level 30 they had like 20, 24. I think it had 29 in dexterity, so it kind of seems like maybe they're also pushing like a magicka and also maybe an avoidance type thing, maybe. So I think that would also kind of pair well with not necessarily be a big strong physical defense, but if I can just avoid the physical attacks, and that would kind of go well with being a spell defensive tank.
Right. And you mean, remember their armor class, they're limited to heavy
mail?
Chain, right?
Yeah,
heavy chain, heavy mail. Yeah, so they can't wear plates, so I mean they have to account for that too, so it's a good point.
Yeah, overall I'm very happy. I can definitely see why they can be a main tank for grouping and stuff, and I think they'll be just fine on their own for just running a dungeon crawl or whatever. I think they'll be fine.
And we don't know.
Good.
We don't know a ton about the paladin, but I'll tell you right now, like if I was warrior tanking and my off tank was a dire lord, I'd feel real good about it. Like real good about it. So
yeah,
for sure.
I think how they're saying that they want each tank to be viable. I think it's coming to light. I can definitely see that.
Awesome. Anything else for you?
No, that's it pretty much. So just
awesome.
Waiting to see all the other ones.
Yeah, I hear you there, man. They can't come soon enough,
hey,
right?
I did have a question. So pre-alpha, I know we had the shakeout, and that was a weekend or 2 weekends ago. Had there still been continuous ongoing things like after the shakeout, or were there only the 2 days and then they're going to announce another testing session, or is it kind of been ongoing?
So that's fair to ask. No. It's fair to ask because VR has been very public about all the testing. So everything you've seen them announce is what we've seen, if that makes sense. And VR has been really cool about that. In the past, they haven't done that. But VR has actually showed everybody before testing, like what testers were going to see. That was the first. during the dev stream, and then they've been announcing it publicly about the shakeouts, which is really cool. We do not have any idea, and I'm not even saying that under NDA, what's next. I'm sure we'll get more info. They're fixing bugs, they're polishing stuff. We saw the wizard tonight is apparently in. So, Joppa said tonight that they're looking to get all the classes in. So that's obviously going to take some time and some work. I don't know. I was hoping to hear a little bit more about it tonight, but hopefully we'll see something roll out on what's next soon. Cool. We're in the dark as much as you are on that. So,
okay. Sounds good. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Awesome. Take care of you.
See you.
All right, so we got 2 left. Let's grab Zelik, and then we'll end the show with Nefel. So, Zelik, we're bringing you in next. What's up, Zelik? How are you?
Good. How's it going?
Going real well, man. What's up? I mean, this was a pretty good stream. Got a lot of stuff out there to the public. So, what is your thoughts?
Man, I got to say the first thing that stood out to me on this stream was the faction system having the hidden factions.
Yes.
Yeah. The fact that there's so many, they're so intricate, right? They're so intricately woven together. It's very, very interesting.
Not like that, but Joppa touched on the point that you might take faction hits that you don't see until you discover that they're affecting. So you could be going out there and killing like the Godiah that's on there, and they might have an ally that you're not aware of, who's now becoming aware that you're killing them.
Which is why you might want to have a keeper in your group to prevent that from happening.
Right.
That's one of the things that I so hope if I get to interview Joppa again, I would love to do an entire show on just like what the keeper's role is going to be. And we're starting to see more pieces of that, right? Different paths and dungeons they've talked about. They're talking now about faction discovery. Like I would love to talk for an hour about the keeper and how it plays into just the whole world. Like it's not just something you do on the side. It can't be. It's too cool. Perception is too cool. It can't just be on the side. And we're starting to see these other things. So
yeah, I 100% agree with you. I remember watching another one of the streams in the past where they were showing hidden aspects of a dungeon that might pop up for a keeper or something like that. And it could be that some of the clues that were revealed might actually tie into factions, and maybe only the keeper has the knowledge of that faction, like a secret passage to bypass an area of a dungeon or something that's used by a faction.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really enticing. That's pretty exciting to think about.
I know how excited you are, Therek, about the interlacings of how the world works and how important factions are to that. So.
Well, and we had that experience when we played, right? I was like, let's go explore, let's go check stuff out, and you're like, oh, all right, sure. We can stay here and farm this, stuff. Or I'm like, no, let's go walk around, check it out. So
there's definitely me and Therek are interesting pair because he's the elf ranger, I'm the anti-elf rogue. It's similar in a sense to like a different version of each other in a sense. But then, like, he's the adventure lore guy. I'm the numbers loot guy. Like, it's gonna be fun times. That's for sure.
It is. Yeah, 2 sides of the same coin.
So speaking of the elves, if they made rogue an elf-only class, would you still play a rogue?
I jokingly said to like VR in one of the servers, like, hey, if you guys let me play rogue, I'll even be an elf. If I had,
I mean, I'm going to say no. I don't think he would. I think he'd revert to his tankish ways if that was the choice.
That's kind of what I was thinking right there as you were saying it. Like, I think maybe I just end up being a warrior. But
yeah,
it's hard to say. Like, wait until we see the rogue reveal. Because I know just as much about rogues as you guys do. So if the rogue reveal comes out and it's like, and then someone's like, well, what if you had to be an elf? I'm like, nah, let's go warrior.
Fair enough.
There you go.
But the Dire Lord that they showed tonight, I thought it was pretty cool. It's definitely a unique style of tanking. It's not something that you see commonplace in a lot of other games out there, which makes me really excited for it.
And it works really well. I think that's the key. Like, it's not just they implemented something that you don't see much. It works really well. I'm very excited to see how a warrior tank feels and plays. Like, I know we've seen the Amber Fate ones, but a lot's changed since then, even though that wasn't too long ago. But I just want to see how that heavy armor tank plays when you have it in the hands of someone who's not sacred. So,
it also sort of means that they have to put lots of casters in the world in terms of mobs, right? Like it's easy to just populate a zone with rats and bats and stuff, but if you don't have casters, the Dire Lord doesn't really get a purpose. So, they have to account for that. They have to, I think having more casting type mobs, it makes the world more interesting generally, rather than just the heavy hitter type stuff. So
I think that also encourages diversified tanking when it comes to your group complement, right? Because if you're going out there and a world is populated to have enough casters to make it worth playing a Dire Lord, that also means your warrior is going to be disadvantaged versus the Dire Lord. But on the other side of that same coin, if you have the warrior who's best at the melee, then maybe you're going to consider having both in your group in order to account for both of those possibilities.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's really good point.
Cerulean just said. Sorry, Cerulean just said, I'd imagine a lot of bosses might do mixed damage. So, it creates tank swapping is always a mechanic of tanking raid fights or boss fights. It creates a very interesting dynamic to tank swap, where a lot of times in games, tank swapping was a requirement. Like you'd be fighting a boss and they would put 6 stacks of X on you. And if you get 7, you'll die. So you swap at 6 stacks until they fall off. That's really how tank swapping was. But to say, okay, you're fighting this boss, it's going to be a melee heavy first phase, and then it's going to swap into a caster phase, and we're going to tank swap because this is where you're better. That's where, when people talk about meta, I'm okay with that, because the difference between what we know of meta and what Pantheon meta might be is it's these classes are specific and they're being designed specifically. So they're the best for this situation. That's perfectly okay, because there's going to be a give and a take there.
Yeah, absolutely. There could even you could even run into a situation where they provide us an ability for a Dire Lord or a warrior to maybe kind of have a momentary taking over a threat or aggro, right? Sort of like jumping in front of the bullet kind of thing, so that the Dire Lord could sort of eat the bullet for the spell that's being cast, or vice versa with the warrior too.
Yeah, exactly. Different situations, right? So many different variants of situations that how the meta will be for different situations, and if there's a lot of different situations, then you don't really get a meta sort of.
Yeah, and honestly, that's an exciting concept too, when the meta is not defined and easy to make out like that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Zelig, thanks, man. Anything else before we let you go?
No, that's it for me. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah. See you, man.
All right, so we're going to wrap up with Nefel. There was a good comment here from Hoye in the chat, and it's actually, I like this a lot. He said he's really glad the Dire Lord isn't as close to the Shadow Knight as he was expecting. I think that's a really good call out, because I think that, EQ fans saw the Dire Lord that were Shadow Knight fans, and they immediately jumped to that, right, as being the class that they might want to play. So having it be very different, especially because, let's be honest, the Dire Lord is a unique Pantheon thing. The name of it, what they want to do with it is a little different from what we've seen. And I think that's really important, because there's these certain things that the Pantheon's doing to be different, right? Look at what they did with gnomes. That's a very different jump, right?
And people remember that. People remember games for their unique classes and races. People remember the Chloromancer, right? Is always memorable from Rift, right? So this is one of those things that I think people are going to latch on to.
That's a great bring up of the Chloromancer. When you have that unique class, if we say Dire Lord in 5 years from now, it immediately brings Pantheon to the minds of people. That's a really good design. So.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in Nefel in.
All right.
Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you guys?
What's up, Neff? Good.
So what's up? What'd you think of the stream tonight?
So I have mixed feelings.
Okay.
And I'm going to caveat by saying that at least for the first 15 minutes or so, I wasn't able to pay close attention because I was stuck with work stuff. But I appreciate that we're getting more information on Dire Lord, and I think that's awesome. They're really into Dire Lord. I'm not one of those people who's really into Dire Lord. I've just never been able to really connect with the theme of the class, so it's a little harder for me, and I tend to look at it probably a little more critically. And my biggest concern, and I think this is probably true for almost every class, is that I feel like some of those abilities are going to get so potent and so powerful, especially as you get up into higher levels and higher mastery tiers, that it's going to be really tough to design content that's still challenging for people with those abilities. And so what you end up with there, like what we've seen in previous games, is that, you know, like you make something hard enough that it's a challenge for the tank, and then everybody else gets one shot because it has to be challenging for the tank. And so I worry about things like that, and I worry that some of these abilities, like Vital Cage, is awesome, but when it gets to that 100% level, does it become overpowering? And does it enforce like a mudflation around it, where you start making things ludicrously hard in order to account for the fact that somebody might have Vital Cage? So that's something I worry about with Dire Lord, and that's why I'm kind of on the fence about it. But you know, that could just as easily be any other class. I don't want to like.
Of course.
Right. So.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I hear where you're coming from, but you know, I always sort of think about it from the perspective of I'd rather have these potentially very powerful abilities and let the content sort of come to those abilities, right? Like they know what they are, so they know how to design for that. I think if you were talking about it from a perspective of like we weren't involved in both. We weren't involved in the class design, but we're involved in the content design. Then you might have an issue, right? But if it's sort of a team that's building both, I guess maybe what I'm saying is like, you know, you can work it. It's a little bit more. It's less scary that way, I guess. Is what I'm saying. And it's also like, you know, late game. If it's the highest mastery tier, I'm guessing it would be a late game type of ability or a late game content that you're facing when you have that level of mastery with it. So, you know, I don't know how that's not going to be your common mob. That's not going to be the thing you're running around fighting all the time, right? So,
and let's not forget that attacks can be you can make it so they're not able to be mitigated, right? So like that's a common thing. Like certain attacks penetrate mitigation, or you know, what if there's an atmosphere that stops you from being able to use that spell? Or certain abilities. So I think that there's a lot of things within Pantheon. Now, these are all hypothetical, and I think this whole conversation obviously is, so I think they have a place. But yeah, it's interesting. I like I said, I immediately worried when I saw the 100% reduction. But at the same time, you know, if that's your bread and butter and you can get crushed by a huge clubbing blow, then if there's a give and a take, it's fine.
Yeah, and in the end, it all comes down to balancing stuff, right? So it's just, you know, whenever I see ability reveals like this, I always get a little bit nervous because, you know, like you guys, I've seen so many other games that balanced around that kind of stuff really poorly.
Yeah,
and I don't want Pantheon to go that route.
You know what? And it just sort of makes me think of, and I just thought of now is when I was big into playing Hearthstone, and they would do like card reveals for each expansion, right? And you always wanted, you know, everybody was always trying to figure out which cards were the most powerful, which ones were going to break everything, right? And you looked for certain words, right? And one of those words was immune. Anything that made you immune to something, you're like, all right, we have to be careful with this card. It's probably going to be pretty powerful. And it usually was, right? So there was like cards like Ice Block and things that made you immune to, and you couldn't take any damage. And they ended up being very powerful, very consistently. So you're not wrong. I mean, you know what you're talking about. So I think it's a good point.
But, you know, I'm sure it's going to work out fine. One thing that VR is really awesome about, actually they're awesome about a lot of things, but one thing is they really do listen to all of us. So they're, you know, like I know Joppa's lurking out there on the stream right now, and he's probably taking notes. So I'm sure that, you know, things will work out. But yeah, that was my reaction to Dire Lord. The other thing that I noticed, which I was surprised that nobody else has seemed to catch, was the Scavengers Bag.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think about the Scavengers Bag?
You know, it's a good question. I actually didn't even do anything with it in our time that we played. I found, I mean, I just didn't find the things I needed, I think, to make use of it. So I don't know. It's an interesting concept. You know what? Again, it reminds me of going back to EverQuest. Remember the boxes, like the crafting boxes where you put stuff in, hit the combine button. You know, it makes me think of that. And that was always sort of like, you always bit your tongue when you did that. And you're like nervous that things are just going to disappear and you did it wrong. You put something wrong in there. But I don't know. I don't know what to think about it. It's kind of, I need to maybe see more, need to play with it a little more, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, is it any surprise to you that I didn't look at it at all?
No, it doesn't really surprise me at all.
So, Joppa kind of talked about it tonight, that it's sort of like a test phase. Like I don't think it's going to be in that iteration, but it's like a test phase for what will become scavenging. So
actually, he said it's the evolution of scavenging, which
Okay,
I think
yeah,
is really important, right? Because we first heard about scavenging like a year and a half ago, whenever that dev stream or that roundtable was that they talked about
Right.
it, and back then it was basically like, hey, you walk into an enemy camp and you can rifle through their stuff and find things, which was like, oh, okay, well that's neat, but that's not really very compelling on its own. But now if the scavenging bag is any indication, and if I understood Joppa correct tonight, you'll be able to find those things out in the world, and wherever they are, whatever they are, and you can put them in this scavenging bag and potentially make something useful out of them. And that has a lot of potential for two reasons. One is you can have really rare stuff to find, kind of like how if anybody ever played EverQuest 2, the collectible system there, where you might have really rare collectibles that were super hard to find. And that definitely is something that a lot of players enjoy, is the idea that you're finding things out in the world that are rare or difficult to get. But then you can take those and you can turn them into other things, and potentially even very powerful things. So it almost becomes like a sort of a mini game where you're traveling around the world, you're discovering all this stuff, and then you're saying, okay, what can I make out of this? Maybe I get a loaf of bread, or maybe I get like a really amazing crafting material, and it's got a lot of potential. And I think I like the aspect of discovery that goes along with it, where it's not just, I'm picking up stuff off the ground and using it, so it's not a glorified foraging skill, but it's more about discovering new things.
I was going to ask you how you felt. To me, you're the crafting king. I am not. To me, it sounds like something that, like, combining these elements together, it could be tied into your base like style crafting, but instead it's like this sub crafting system. Are you okay with that extra layer of crafting, or do you just see this as like another type of gathering?
That's a really good question. I think as long as there is a more advanced type of crafting on top of this, or not on top, but alongside it, I'm okay with something like the scavenging bag existing. Like what I wouldn't want to see is, I wouldn't want to have the scavenging bag be the be all end all of crafting for Pantheon. That would be terrible.
Hopefully that's not the case.
But if it's a thing that like anybody can use, where they can maybe make themselves some food, or maybe fishing bait, or even like occasionally find something that's a little more valuable, then hey, that's awesome. Especially if they go tie it in to crafting materials, because one of the things that I've been pushing for a long time is the idea that crafting shouldn't exist in a vacuum, right? Crafters should need adventurers and explorers, just like they need tools and crafting stations. So, who's to say that scavenging couldn't be a source of some of those rare ingredients that crafters would really want to use for the things that they make? I think that would be totally cool. It would establish a really good economy. Or at least it would be the basis for one. So yeah, I don't have a problem with it, as long as it's a part of a bigger picture, and we don't stop there.
Yeah, it kind of feels like what it is. It kind of feels like it's just, we're seeing this first iteration of this experimentation that they're doing with this. So, where they go with this, like what it develops into, is going to be interesting. I enjoy the mystery of discovery when it comes to scavenging stuff too. I really do enjoy that, and there's a lot of games I could sort of think of that do that well. It's interesting that you'll see the items in the world, like when they were showing on the stream tonight, the mushroom, right? So picking something like that up, like instead of like being a button that you hit that says forage and you find something that you can't actually see, you're actually seeing these things, right? So it kind of gives you, depending on how far away it is, you can see it. You're like, oh, okay, there's something way over there. I'm going to go grab it real quick, right? And you pull 6 mobs back to your group, but you got that mushroom, right? So something like that. It's pretty cool.
Did you guys see Sacred? What he just said?
Yes, I did. And yeah, Sacred, I will totally be there with a glue gun and popsicle sticks, because we're making a kick me sign to put on your back.
We're gonna make you an arrow that always leads you to the tank, so you can run to the tank with your mom.
Exactly. Sacred needs a sign. That's what he needs.
Big blinking lights. This way, this way.
He'd still get lost. What is he? So let's not ever have Therek and Sacred navigating.
No, don't do that.
Yeah, that might not go so well.
No.
Sacred's a great guy, so we can play with him. But he's a good guy.
Do you guys know how many times Sacred has kept me up till 5 a.m. when I was trying to go to bed at midnight to talk about something that he knew I couldn't stop talking about? So he's gonna have to take any abuse he gets from me for the 5-hour midnight to 5 a.m. transmog conversations he gets me into because he knows I can't stop. So,
oh my god,
a little bit of payback.
Be careful, because Sacred does have the ability to make every transmog that you use a bear transmog.
Nice. All right. Well, anything else that stood out to you?
I mean, gosh, we could talk all night, but yeah, the Scavengers Bag was a big one, and it was cool that Joppa brought that up since it wasn't something that had really ever been called out. I'm happy to see that scavenging is getting some treatment. And apart from that, some of what you guys talked about earlier with perception, I'm not quite sold on perception being the way to get factions, and part of that is that the idea of my mouse cursor turning into a question mark over an NPC kind of doesn't sit well with me. Mm-hmm. I'm the kind of guy who goes in the game and like turns off player nameplates, and I don't want a lot of help from the UI and discovering the world. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about that, but hey, we'll have to just see how it plays, right? We'll get in there during alpha, during beta, and I'm sure we'll have lots of feedback on it. So
agreed. Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I got, guys. Good show
right
tonight.
on,
well, the saying is, if it bleeds, it dies. So. All right, now thank you very much, man. Take it easy.
See you.
Have a good one.
All right, well, another great show in the books. We want to thank you to Visionary Realms, Ronick, Sacred, Joppa. Thank you guys for interacting with the chat. That's awesome. I know people love that, so definitely give those guys a thank you, chat, for hanging out with us tonight. And thank you as well to Joppa for sort of last minute okaying us to openly talk about some of the Dire Lord abilities we use to give a little more depth on them. So Joppa, thank you very, very much for giving us the ability to speak to that. So I do want to make clear that we did get permission to do so before we just started rattling off about our play sessions. So again, please make sure if you're a tester, please don't share anything without the consent of VR. That's very important.
Yeah, very much appreciated. Very much appreciated. Made for a very less complicated stream for I think both of us to talk and what we could say and what we couldn't. So really appreciate that. Just to say, look at the poll before we go off. That it seems like people really enjoyed the stream. So
24 votes. Wish we get more people voting in here, but 24 votes, all in the amazing or good for the most part. So looks like everybody thought it was a good stream. 59% almost. So really That's good awesome stuff there. The last thing I just want to throw out there is we announced it on Twitter, but if you guys didn't see, we did update Pantheon.plus pretty considerably on the main page. And if you guys are having any issues or you see anything with this update, jump into our Discord and let us know. There's a website feedback channel for bug reports and stuff like that. But this is a huge update for us because now when you vote articles, there's going to be 3 trending videos. Or articles or whatever we are going to have eventually. So the media that's on the site, you'll actually be able to vote up so it gets more play, whether it's a Pantheon Plus, a Basgrim, a community member video, whatever it may be. So check that out. If you guys are having any problems making accounts, we've heard some people having problems with certain names. Let us know so we can help you. You can reach out to me anytime on Discord, Twitter, whatever is easiest for you. But check that out for us, please. It's important to us. Pantheon.plus, check out the new format. Let us know what you think. And this weekend, Sunday, Rewind, as always.
Sunday.
We're not going anywhere with that. We're good.
No, be there. Yeah, we're doing it. Let's do it.
All right, guys. So we'll see everybody on Sunday. Thank you to everybody for coming out and hanging out with us. We had a great crowd tonight. Again, thank you to VR. And thank you for the stream, VR. It was a lot of fun tonight. So thank you to the Green Room. It was a rocking Green Room tonight. Everybody had some great points, some great different conversation pieces from almost everybody. And thank you to everybody who subscribes, follows us across all these insane amounts of social media that I have to manage. But it makes it worth it when you guys are all there helping us out. So thank you, Therek. Thank you for doing these late night ones with us that are really quick and kind of chaotic to put together. As always, man, it is just always a pleasure. So
It's always fun every time. I look forward to it every month, man.
All right. Well, we'll end with the bear. Take it easy, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.